The second day of the end of March auction of Miss Lily and Friends features collections of dolls from various private collections and estates. And and there's some absolutely extraordinary dolls there, including a wonderful collection of early teddy bears. But I also wanted to show you something in particular that we have had come to us, which is original owner and I think is deserving of getting special attention. This is a group of about 20 original dolls by the American artist Dorothy Heizer, who worked mid-century, about 1940s to, well, as she ended in 1960. She actually began as early as 1920. But her heyday of most of her dolls, and when I say heyday, folks, let me tell you, she made slightly over 300 dolls her entire life. These were all intricately made. Dorothy Heizer, Heizer, an important person to know. Well, we had a phone call from the daughter-in-law of one of these original collectors of Dorothy Heizer. And she said, I have these dolls and I have original correspondence. Well, I got really excited because anything that's like that. And here in my hand is the original correspondence we have of letters written from Dorothy Heizer to the collector, Mrs. Wells in Pennsylvania. On top of the pile of letters written by Dorothy Heizer is a letter written by the famous, or should I say infamous, Velva Lee Dickinson of the New York City doll shop. And let the camera now just going on and show you all of these dolls while I move to the side and tell you a little bit about their story. The Wells family of Pennsylvania had visited New York and went into the Velva Lee Dickinson doll shop where they saw some of the dolls that she had offered. And subsequently, Velva Lee sent them a few samples of photographs of things that could be available. They seem to have bought a doll from her. Velva Lee Dickinson's letter is dated 1943. Any of you who have followed this wonderful story, well, I don't know if it's wonderful, the scandalous story of Velva Lee Dickinson and the doll spy that the FBI arrested. She was arrested 1 year later in 1944 for having used her dolls to send messages regarding issues of the war. Velva Lee Dickinson, the spy. She was arrested, and that seems to have been the end of her relationship with both the Wells and Dorothy Heizer, because immediately following that, starting in 1945, the correspondence occurs from Dorothy Heizer writing to the Wells couple in Pennsylvania, saying, here is what I could make for you if you want. Now let me tell you about Dorothy Heizer. She was one of the charter members of the NIATA organization, and she was an artist, not just a doll maker, but an artist. In fact, she called her work sculptures in cloth, and that was very important to her. She had an educational background in art, and when she decided to try to make a doll, the intricacies of what she did is so important. A lot of it is written in this wonderful treatise by Helen Bullard, who was also a charter member of NIATA, and she wrote a special booklet just about Dorothy Heizer because her work was so intricate and phenomenal. Dorothy Heizer described the making of her doll is that she would begin with a copper wire armament, and she would describe at great length how dense it had to be. It couldn't be too thin because then it wouldn't hold a pose, but it couldn't be too thick because then it would become bulky and unwieldy. She worked to get the proper tilt of the head. For example, it was very, very important for her to have the neck extended in such a way that the head would be well worked. Then every single one of her dolls was individually made, was individually sculpted with a soft cloth cover on the top, and then hours spent in painting the face. She made historical figures, and let me tell you about the problem she had, because this happens a lot in history. We judge something that happens, whether it's a work of art or an incident or an event, we judge them by our standards of today. And you can't do that. You've got to place things in the context of their time. What was going on then? Dorothy Heizer wanted to make dolls representing historical figures, but she wanted them to be accurate. We're talking the 1940s. How is she going to make them accurate? Where is she going to get the information to make Henry VIII and his 6 wives? The only possible way would be oil paintings. That's where the images would be. However, do you think that was easy? No. You think you could get it, oh yeah, well, let me go to my computer and I'll just pop that up and I'll have, within 10 seconds, I'll have 20 different color photograph images of Henry VIII that I can make my doll from. No, not really. In her letters, you will see over and over again about her laborious trips trying to find an image, and she would go to the New York and she would visit the Metropolitan and she would look for paintings. She would scour books, and then she would write, well, I found a painting in a book, but the book was only in black and white, so I still don't know what color to make the costumes. And the laborious work in finding something that she could copy, because she was a bear about having it absolutely precise as to what they should wear. The Duke of Wellington was a particularly sore spot with her. In the pile of letters which are included with the collection, there's this long reference that goes on and on about how she's trying to find a costume of the Duke of Wellington, because most of them are just like waist up paintings of him, and she can't find anything to show his complete costume, and it must be correct. That was so important to her. As she went on, her work was very, very dedicated to intricacies of the costume, and she became fascinated with beadwork. She's noted for that, and if you're looking at some of the costumes and seeing the detail work on them, every single one of those tiny beads were sewn individually by hand. And that is the sad ending story of her career, because by the 1960s, she wrote to the Wells family, her son wrote to the Wells family, my mother can no longer make dolls. Her hands are crippled from all of the beads she has ever sewn on them. And that was the end of her career making of dolls. There is one doll in particular that I want to call to your attention, the one that's taller than any of the others, and that is the doll standing at the back, whose name is Flossie the Flapper Doll. She was presented in Priscilla magazine in 1928. She was presented with patterns so people could make their own Flossie the Flapper Doll. But Dorothy Heizer also had a few made for herself or for sale, I don't know. And at one point in all of the correspondence that I have, the son wrote to the Wells couple and said, my mother will now go into her old boxes of things that from when we moved, and she found one Flossie the Flapper Doll that is preserved, and she's offering it to you if you want it. And there she is, she's standing, she's in absolutely glorious original condition, that wonderful costume she's wearing. I cannot say enough about these Dorothy Heizer dolls, because I think that they truly fall in the category of fine art. They are well to be preserved, and the Wells family did a wonderful service to preservation and to history by preserving these so well over all of the years. And I thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you all at the auction.